Hey guys, it's Rachel, and welcome back to Codependency Issues. Today I'm going to talk about parenting. So, as some of you may or may not know, I have three kids. They are all under the age of 7, and parenting can be really hard. So, I was on Reddit today and I saw a post, and on this post, it was a kid on the floor of the restaurant. Not just under the table, like he's partially under the chair of, I'm assuming, the table he was at, but also like in the walkway. Now, this kid wasn't like a little toddler or a little preschooler. He was definitely at least 8, if not older. He was definitely old enough to know how to behave in a restaurant without being entertained by some kind of electronic or something like that. Now, so I was looking in the comments on this post, and somebody commented something that I felt very deeply like I could understand. Um, so this person said that they do this with their very young child. I think they said 2 or 3, and the problem is that either they let their kid run around in the restaurant, and obviously they get judged, or what they do, they try to control the behavior by giving the child an iPad to look at when he gets really restless or bored, and people start to judge him and come up and say stuff to him. So I can understand this. As a parent, every decision you make, other people seem to think they get to have an opinion on, which is not the case. Your kid playing on an iPad at the restaurant is not affecting anybody else. Period. If you let your child look at an iPad, that's fine. That's not affecting anybody. That's not hurting anybody. And the thing is, what really kills me is people can be very anti-electronics. I understand limiting children's electronics. They're still developing, they're still learning, and it is important not to let your kids sit in front of an iPad all day long. But here's the thing. People need to remember that kids are kids. They're not adults. They are children. They're still learning, and you have to be patient with them, and you have to understand that it is hard for them to sit still, especially very young children. Older, like 8 and 10, yes, maybe it can be difficult, especially if they're energetic, but they're at an age where they know better now. But younger children, even my 6-year-old, yes, she gets restless and antsy sometimes. She can want to emulate the behavior that her 3-year-old sister is trying to do in a restaurant. Like, my 3-year-old is my most energetic child. My 3-year-old is the one who's constantly running around in circles, and I'm kidding you not, running around in circles. She wanted to run circles around somebody who was in my house in my living room, and I said she couldn't do that. I said, why don't you run over there? She didn't want to do that, so I pulled out a chair and I sat it in the middle of a really open area in my living room, and she ran around the chair. That's what she wanted to do because she couldn't go outside at that point. Otherwise, I'd let her go outside. But the thing is, younger children, even children who aren't inherently energetic, they still have a very difficult time sitting down for long periods of time. Like my 3-year-old, she is the most antsy, energetic kid you will ever meet. Maybe not the most, but she's my most antsy and energetic kid. She has lots and lots of energy. So, for a case like that, I believe it is definitely okay to give your child an iPad at a restaurant. And the thing is, people in the comment section, and here's the deal, I don't get into comment wars. I read through, there are certain communities, like on Reddit or other websites, where I know I can safely read through the comments because it's not going to be this huge storm of crappy, awful people. Yes, there are plenty of crappy, awful people out there in the world, and I'm aware of them. But if I'm looking at certain articles or pictures or whatever, what have you, if I'm looking at content, like, I don't want people being trolls or being jerks for the sake of being jerks. If you have an argument against something, make a clear, concise argument in a way that's not you being a giant dick to everybody. And the same goes for people who are not arguing against whatever this thing is. Okay, just don't be a dick. This is the main bottom line here. Don't be a jerk. But back to what we're talking about. There were people in this one particular comment thread, the person who commented that they let their kid have the tablet, and then people will come up and even say stuff to them like you're ruining their brains or what have you. Okay, and there were two types of people in the comments. There were people who agreed with this and people who disagreed with this, which is fine. I have nothing against parents or people who are against electronics or letting their kids have electronics, and I understand the reasons why. My only thing is this: in situations like that, do not judge the other parent, whether they let their kids have electronics or not. As long as they are doing something to stop their kid from running around the restaurant or from being disruptive to others, that's fine. How they choose to stop that, as long as it's not in some way, abusive, like yelling at your kid, shut up, you little shit, or I'm gonna beat your ass or something, like that's not okay. But finding a way to, I'm not saying spank, and I'm not saying I'm against spanking, okay? Don't take it like that. I'm talking about like legitimate abusive behavior, not you're gonna get a spanking if you don't stop. Um, but as long as the parent is doing something to try to rectify the behavior, that's fine, and you're gonna have to be patient. Parents don't always have the options to take the option to take their kid out of the restaurant. That's the thing, because a lot of people were saying, well, my parent would take me out of the restaurant, blah blah. Here's the thing: I've got 3 kids, and I rarely go out to eat alone. But recently, my 3 kids were out alone. And what I mean alone, let me rephrase: I rarely go out to eat without some other adult and my kids. I'm rarely out with just my kids because I don't have a second car. My husband works, and the times he works a really weird shift, really weird days. So most of the time, if my kids and I are out, my husband is with us, or we're visiting with my parents or another adult that we know, and they picked us up and we're going out somewhere together. So, but on the rare occasions that I am, if say my 3-year-old is misbehaving and running around, I don't have the luxury of just walking outside, because one, the people might think I'm stealing and not paying for my bill, and two, I can't just leave my 6-year-old and my 1-year-old unattended. So in situations like that, the options for me would be to either A, let my 3-year-old have something on my phone if I am not prepared, because in this situation, I was not prepared. I was out helping somebody, another adult. I dropped them off at where they had to go, and I was going to pick them back up when they were done. And um, they were like, hey, so you don't have to go home while you wait. Here's some money. Why don't you go, take your kids to get some french fries and a milkshake? And I'm like, oh, that's really considerate. Thank you very much. So I did. And if now my 3-year-old was very well behaved, she was getting antsy and frustrated because she wanted to know when her milkshake was coming and when her food was coming. But she did a really good job of behaving despite the fact that they were out of crayons, and she didn't really have much to do because I wasn't planning on this. I was planning on just going home while I waited. So this situation was really kind to me. Plus, my 3-year-old was having a really good day. We were all having a pretty good day, I think. And so it was just one of those good days. But you have to take in mind when we're discussing parenting, and especially children, everybody has bad days. Adults have bad days all the time. They get to act like entitled jerks, and people will complain about it, but they don't go, oh, well, somebody should have done something about that, blah, blah, blah. Well, maybe sometimes they do. But then you have kids who act like entitled jerks because kids are inherently entitled jerks because they don't know any better. And people will either be like, oh, well, that parent's not doing anything, or oh, somebody needs to shut that child up, or blah, blah, blah. Here's the deal: kids are still learning coping behaviors. Hell, even adults are still learning coping behaviors. Recently, we had this huge thing happen. It was very huge. It was very upsetting and frustrating. It wasn't the end of the world. We didn't lose our house or apartment or anything like that, but it was still one of those things that's upsetting and frustrating and really fucking scary as a parent, or even not even as a parent, just as a person in general. It's really fucking scary. So I was not coping with it well, and there was a lot of yelling, there was a lot of tears, and I felt terrible for it. I apologized, told them my behavior was wrong and I'm going to work on it. But, even as an adult, sometimes we have a really hard time coping with huge emotions. So let's be honest here. When a kid has a hard time maybe coping with a huge emotion of boredom, because for a kid, like a really small kid, boredom is huge and they have a hard time coping with it. And people are like, oh, well, you need to let your kids learn how to cope with boredom and, without having an electronic in front of them. And the thing is, at my house or a house they're familiar with, my friends' houses, the library, or even at my parents' house, they know how to cope with boredom. It's an environment where they know what they can do and what they can't do. And in a restaurant, you tell them you have to sit down, you can't run around. You don't have any toys for them. All they have is maybe a little paper menu that the restaurant gave them with some crayons, and most of the time that will help them just fine. But they still they don't have toys, they don't have an area to go play and use their imagination or what have you. So for them, it can be very hard to just, sit down and be calm. I'm not saying people should let their kids run around wild. That's also not acceptable. I'm just letting people know and to remember that not every situation is as black as white as people may think it is. Because again, it could be a single parent. They don't have the luxury of just taking their kid out at the restaurant. They don't have the luxury of just they don't always have the luxury of saying we're just going to leave, because then you reward that child's behavior, or rather you disrupt the entire meal for that child's behavior. If you're a single parent, say I was out with just my 3 kids and no other adult, and my 3-year-old's behavior was getting so bad we would have to leave. Now, more than likely, as soon as the waitress came, I would be like, let's get some boxes and let's leave. Or I would help my 3-year-old calm down. I would either, it's a hard situation to think about. It depends on her behavior. If it's just coming out of boredom and not actual misbehavior, like she's just getting antsy, she wants to run around and, she can't do that in a restaurant, I would probably let her watch videos on my phone. But if it were something like genuine misbehavior, being a little jerk or what have you, like kids can be, everybody can be jerks, even kids, um, then it's hard to just say, well, say her older sister's still eating and drinking her milkshake and whatever, it's not really nice to her older sister for me to be like, okay, we're going to go pack up all the food. You'll have to eat it in the car, etc., etc. So it just depends on the situation. Um, as a parent, I do my best to make sure that we don't disrupt the people around us. But it can also be really frustrating as a parent when other people feel the need to tell you how you should be parenting your kids, because they don't know anything about the kids. They don't know anything about you, and they don't know anything about your situation. They don't know if your child is possibly on the spectrum. They don't know if perhaps your child is just really energetic, or they don't even know if maybe you guys are having a bad day. Your family invited you out to eat, and this is, say your only time to see this particular family member because they live across the country. Um, all situations that are, can be very difficult, especially for young children who are really energetic. Now, yes, there are parents out there who don't watch their kids in public. There are parents out there who basically stare at their phones the whole time and let their kids run around like crazy. And those parents are very frustrating. I understand. Just don't lump them together with parents who actually do try, is all I ask. So I've rambled on for about 12 minutes now. That's all I'm going to talk about on this subject. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to tell me in the comments what you'd like to see from our channel in the future, and I swear somebody other than me will post the vlog soon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.